Hello, everybody. Good morning. It's great to be here. Thank you to the IWEA team for the invitation to speak. I think I won't get into the detail of the Apple data center deal. What I will do, though, is draw the parallel later on about just the difficulties of developing infrastructure of any type in Ireland, and maybe try to come at it from a positive perspective a bit later on. Just before getting into the opportunities more generally, just take a moment just to make sure that everyone's aware of who we are and what we do. Obviously, outside of the room, we are better known as obviously the State Forestry Company. Within this room, let's say a decade ago, we would have been very well known as a major landlord stroke land agent, and over the last decade, I hope we have become better known as a development outfit in our own right. So it's been a particularly important 5 years or so for our business over the last 4 or 5 years, in that it was the first time that we followed our own money right through to the end of the development cycle, to the point of developed and delivered infrastructure. So that was across 4 large projects with 3 different partners, one with SSE, 2 with ESB, 1 with Bord Namona, and thankfully a very positive success and a good news story for our company. Specifically then, last year was an important year on 2 fronts. Firstly, we decided to monetize our interest in those operating wind farms, which we did, the bulk of whom landed with Greencoat out the line there. And secondly, we really started in earnest our body of work to support what we're going to be doing over the next 10 years. And specifically what that is it's a body of work that sees us delivering up to 1 gigawatt of onshore wind projects on the island of Ireland. Now, that's a big number. It's a little bit distracting, in fact, but it's underpinned by 20-plus projects, a team of 25 people who are doing this on a full-time basis. It's equally challenging because we don't have the luxury of doing anything else. We don't have any other technology play. We don't have any play outside of Ireland. So for us, we're a pure play. And we're going to have to make a virtue of being a kind of a one-trick pony. So to be successful, we really will have to be the best in the development cycle through all of the various, individual steps of it. So that's the kind of the task at hand. And then just to look ahead, lastly, just on us, to look ahead a little bit. I mentioned that partnership was a theme of where we've come to. Partnership very likely to be a theme of where we want to get to as well. We like partnerships. We feel we do them well. Aiming for that classic kind of the whole being better than the sum of the parts kind of outcome. So right now we're working on a development partnership with the ESB with regard to that overall development pipeline, and hope that can go in the right direction over the next coming months. Later in the year, we'd like to start a second partnership process or transaction where we'd like to see what appetite there is for institutional investors to be there on a kind of a framework basis in order to take operating wind farms from us as and when they're delivered. So that's a snapshot on us. Back to the script and the kind of the slot we have here and the opportunities 2030. Obviously, great to be able to look ahead to 2030. It's a number that's stitched into our work day in, day out. I mean, the difficulty for me was actually to come down on the kind of the three opportunities. So inevitably, as most of us do, I started with the long list, thinking I'd work myself down to a short list, and I'll just give you a sense of what my long list was, and in no particular order, but there's some kind of natural clusters there. So firstly, the opportunity to kind of mobilize what has probably been a silent majority, a silent positive majority of the Irish citizens, and the kind of the middle ground we talk about, but it's kind of has been very hard to find. Huge opportunity in itself there. Related to that is obviously what can be done or achieved through the right implementation of investment stroke participation or involvement models. That is going to be very difficult to do in the right way, but it potentially could be a real game changer, and it's something I know that as a company we're deeply committed to. Next, in the next decade, saying goodbye to big fossil plants. We talk about it a lot, but I mean it's going to be game changing from where we have come from over the last 18 years in Ireland. And then specifically in the renewables world that we live in here, obviously the diversification. So David threw up the very interesting stat about where Ireland is. We can now we now have Denmark in the rearview window on onshore wind penetration. but it's clearly too one-sided. Ireland needs to diversify. It should and will. That's a huge challenge and an opportunity in itself. Specifically on markets and design, the new grid allocation system, maybe innovation on the delivery side, that's an opportunity to look forward to. How our new, res models, res auction models, and any aligned corporate PPA models, any aligned other route to markets that might have a kind of a trading genesis, wonderful opportunities to look forward to there. On a more macro basis, the electrification of heat and transport, the virtuous cycle that causes for us in this room is something great to look forward to, as well as I think I saw it on the slide earlier on, the 90% SNSP, what some specific parts of the system need to do to be able to accommodate all of that. And then last but not least, an opportunity about having a fit-for-purpose system, a fit-for-purpose planning system, planning in terms of its rule sets and challenge, of course, and then that clearly without that you can kiss goodbye to both what we're trying to do here as well as repowering. So that's kind of all important. So that was the easy part, getting to the long list. Like I said, the hard part was kind of getting down to the top list of 3, and actually I found myself not being able to do it. Mainly because I kept being pulled back in the direction of the only opportunity we have in the next 10 years is to deliver on our stated ambition. It's the only thing that I think that matters. It doesn't matter if it's 55 resi, it doesn't matter if it's 70% resi. In any of those scenarios or anywhere in between, it's an uphill challenge, and we're going to be doing something that we've never done before. Clearly there's kind of too much at stake not to get there. I think David mentioned there, it kind of took us 20 years to get to where we're at today. We have to, do the same or more again in half of the time. I mean, that's the nature of the challenge here. There are kind of 2 reasons that I kept coming back to this overarching theme of opportunity. One is the kind of the context and the specific nature of the decade that we're heading into. And the second is, the look back, the classic lessons learned from the past and what we can do as we look ahead. So on the decade, I think it's been well spoken about already, and for a lot of us who've been in the sector for a long time, there does feel to be some tailwinds here for the first time ever, and it's fantastic. And whether you look at it from the angle of caring about what vessel you put your coffee into in the morning, or what car you're driving, or the kids that are going to be marching on the Dole this Friday, which is both inspiring and frankly a little bit embarrassing that it's taken teenagers to put a voice on this. We're entering into a special time. They're mobilizing because they recognize the criticality of this decade. Only doing our job of work in 20 years versus 10 has some serious implications. Secondly, taking that lessons learned approach to things as to where we've come from. What struck me, when I looked at the panel that was being pulled together here, is that it is, if the product, maybe putting on a manufacturer's hat, if the product is green electrons, what we have here is a very complex and fragile supply chain. Most of everyone coming at it from a slightly different angle, and their own product of work very different to the person out the line, either ahead or behind. There are a couple of people missing here, as we know. The supply chain industry is missing from here. The funding industry is missing here. Just to differentiate you there, Patrick, from that. But I mean, the bankers in the room. But nevertheless, it is a complex and fragile supply chain, and one that has several individual points of failure. I think as we look back, we saw that there were gaps in policy, there were gaps in grid. Then you had to throw in a couple of financial crises. Developers or bankers or owners, changed their view on cash availability and/or on risk. So as we look back and I look forward, that is probably one of the few common things that we have here. It's the same supply chain. It is as complex as it was, and it still has all of these individual points of failure. So the opportunity, as I said, is to do it right. So therefore, just to get into solution mode, how to do it right. And if I can just pick up on my own kind of personal game of IWEA conference word bingo. David Connolly and Timmy Dooley talk about coordination. Mark Foley talked about collaboration. Paddy, you spoke about working seamlessly. Aoife, you spoke about us working together. And at the end of the day, that is what we have to do differently. I don't think we've done this very well in Ireland. We're very good at one-to-ones. I think it's a function of the DNA and the size of the country. We're very good at that, but I don't think that that is either appropriate or good enough anymore. I think we have to find a better way of coming together in an industry context with these stakeholders, talking in a transparent, safe, and kind of in an execution style more frequently. It's something that hasn't been done before. I think there's plenty of good proxies elsewhere around Europe. If you just look to Britain, our nearest neighbour, they have industry councils all across the main industries that mean the most to them. So if we think that this means a lot to us, we should be seeing more collaboration on those lines. This is neither a kind of a smoke-filled room nor a kind of a talking shop. And just let's keep each of those, never talk about those again. This is just something where we have, a clear, well-chaired, a clear rule of engagement, good deliverables, strong transparency. But it strikes me that actually this supply chain never talks to itself in one room at any point in time, and that seems to me to be a bit criminal. And I think that's where I'd like to leave it. I think we have a ton of opportunities, a ton of opportunities, but for me there's one overarching one. I think it's too important to get wrong, and I'd just like to leave that potential solution with you about how actually with better coordination and collaboration we can find ourselves in the tail end of the next decade in a no regret scenario, having done our best. Many thanks.